Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here, aka Richard Gumph on Facebook. Welcome to EV Components Review. If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. Please watch all my videos, tell your friends about them, things like that. Alright, so in my last video I just showed a macro view of the Bafang BBS HD controller. This is the locked version. And so in this video I wanted to show some ideas I had for possibly unlocking this controller. So on my last video I was right here on this shot, and I showed that those two through holes right there go right to the CAN bus chip. So this is your transceiver chip, and of course your CPU is right here underneath the board. And so the input side of this goes over to the battery pack, or one side of this, not really input side because it's an I/O, so input and output, and the other side goes over to the CPU. Okay, so I don't think that you're going to get past that, not without sniffing the CAN bus signals coming from the battery pack and from the CPU, and seeing what those signals are and being able to fake that with something else, which could be done. That's not particularly hard to do. I do have a CAN bus sniffer, and if I had the full everything, I could probably sniff those signals and see what data signals are being sent from point A to point B and figure that out, and then fake that to the CPU so it enables. I don't think you need to do that, to be honest. I think it will run with or without that. There are some caveats to this. I don't know if the BMS on the battery pack will turn itself off if it doesn't get the right CAN bus signals or not, so that's something I can't really speak to. However, over here, so right on the other side of the board is the main DC to DC converter, and we've got these three little MOSFETs right there. There is a pretty good chance that one of those is some kind of an enable signal, and you turn that thing on, and the DC to DC, which is on the other side, and I know it can be turned off, it's got a leg for that, so it's got an enable signal, so probably you turn one of these guys off, and then that DC to DC turns off, in which case the entire power stage is off. And so probably simply by applying the right signal to the right one of these little MOSFETs turns on that DC to DC, and it just turns on and everything runs. So that's one of my theories, is that one of those is doing that trick. The other thing is, and you can also get that to here as well. So here is the DC to DC converter. Come on, focus. Yeah, I don't know which leg it is, but I've told you what the part number is, so you can go look that up. But one of those legs on there is going to be that enable pin on there, and then that DC powers up, and then it powers everything else. So you do that, and that's going to be one possible way, and it may be as simple as that. You just simply give it its enable signal, everything turns on, everything loves life, and then it starts working. That's assuming that there's not something going on in the battery pack too that turns off battery voltage, which I don't think is the case. Because if that was the case, then you could never turn the thing on to begin with. The whole thing would be just completely dead flat. So there's a really high chance that the battery pack is on all the time, and all that's happening is the CPU is saying, nope, I'm not going to send commutation signals, or this is all turned off, like this DC to DC is turned off, or like on the bottom side of the board, I know that this buck chip has got an enable pin on it, so all you'd have to do is tell that to disable, in which case everything here is off. Or another possibility is you've got these three MOSFETs right here. So like one of those enables that DC to DC, and like the other two, they turn on and off and provide 12 volts over to these guys. In which case, if those are off, then you're not getting 5 volts anywhere. And again, that would leave everything turned off. So, maybe you enable all three of those MOSFETs and everything just turns on and loves life and it just starts working. That's one of my theories. Here is the I/O board. And most likely, oh, come on, camera, focus. There we go. Most likely this DC to DC has nothing to do with anything else, and that can be turned on and off completely independent of the controller working or not. My third theory is that this brown wire right here doesn't get 5 volts on it, in which case neither does this red wire or that red wire, or probably that red wire, until those linear regulators that are on the main board power up. So possibly if you were to apply 5 volts to these, everything would power up that way too. So that's my other theory, is that these ones here, if you can just get 5 volts on those things, and everything loves life and it just starts working. But I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that's the case because of these little MOSFETs over here. I think that like 2 of those turn on these linear regulators, and the third one turns on that main DC to DC. And so probably the way this works is, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but like this one turns on, that enables the DC to DC there, that provides 12 volts that then can go over to these guys, and then these 2 MOSFETs turn on right after that, which then would turn on, provide current over to these guys. That's my theory. So yeah, probably you have to get these guys turned on before everything else can work. And just applying 5 volts to the daughter board is probably not going to cut it, because then this 12 volt DC to DC over here is not turned on. So probably that's how this works. You turn on those 3 MOSFETs right there, and then everything powers up, and it all loves life, whether you get the CAN bus signal from the pack or not. So anyway, I hope that helps some people out. I think that is probably all the more I can tell you about how this probably works without actually having a full entire BBS HD to do all this stuff with. Otherwise, I am making guesses, and I am, looking at circuits and things like that and making decisions based on what I think is happening here. But without the full thing, and without being able to actually measure what happens, at the outputs of these 2 5-volt regulators and checking those MOSFETs over there, things like that. Without being able to do that stuff, in which case I need everything, I can't be sure. But yeah, those are my theories. I think you can get past the blockout just by simply enabling that DC to DC and probably turning on those 3 MOSFETs, and then everything just powers up and it just starts working, whether CAN bus does the right thing or not. So yeah, hope to help some folks out, and enjoy.